The spin is in. The Toronto Regional Real Estate Board has released their monthly stats and accompanying market report for March. And if I didn't know any better, I would think the market is full of sunshine and rainbows, and maybe a few cute kittens thrown in there as well. I'll jump into that right here, right now on Live at Lunch. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Lambros Demos on this wet and dreary Wednesday afternoon. But according to TRREB, everything's all sunny, right? Wow. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh. I mean, just reading this report, I always get a kick out of it, but I love how they try to always look on the bright side, right? So gotta love the optimism. I love it. So I want to read some chunks out of this report for you, and then show you what's actually going on, right? So March 2024 home sales reported through TRREB's MLS system. TRREB is Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Were lower than March 2023 result. Understatement, right? Due in part to the statutory holiday Good Friday falling in March this year versus April last year. So they're blaming it on Good Friday and Easter weekend because there was a one-day holiday, and that's why stats are lower than they were last year, which, I mean, that's a little bit extreme. Maybe some people weren't transacting over the holidays, but that's a bit of a stretch by anyone's imagination. Let's take Brampton, for example, because Brampton is very multicultural community, very multicultural area, okay? And sales were 16% less year over year from March last year to March this year. So you're telling me that's because of Good Friday? Yeah, I don't think so. Not only Christians buy and sell houses, right? So that's a bit of a stretch, the way I see it. But before we get into this further, they are, again, underplaying how slow the market is right now. And I don't know to whose benefit that is, but I put a post out earlier. The stats are not just lower than last year. They are the lowest since the 2008/2009 financial crisis that we had, when nobody was buying houses at that point. The lowest since that point, and the third lowest of the 21st century. So since the turn of the century, since about 2000, 2001, 2024 is the third lowest. I think the financial crisis was the lowest one, coming in at around 6,100. 2001 was also pretty low, coming in around 6,300. And this past month was about 6,500. Okay, so now that we have that context, that we know what we're talking about here, we can continue reading through this report. Hey, Fernando, thanks for joining me. So, despite, next paragraph, right? Despite a better supplied market compared to last year. Again, another understatement. So what they mean by better supplied, I looked at the year over year in the four areas that I trade in mostly. In Toronto, supply was up about 30%, right? 1/3 more. In Mississauga, it was about 22%, so about 1/5 more. In Brampton, it was up 44%, almost half more than, almost 50% more than the year before. And in Oakville, it was about 15% more. So, when they say a better supplied market, they are really underestimating how much more supply we have this year compared to last year. And let's face it, nobody wanted to transact last year. We were still in the midst of these interest rate hikes. Nobody was sure what was happening. But the market did start picking up last year in March, if you recall. Okay, and we hit, it increased in March. We were looking at a more traditional spring market, right? So everybody was optimistic. There hadn't been an interest rate hike since December, right? So we had January, February, March. So people were confident, say, okay, the hikes are over. We're going into the spring market. Everything's rosy, We're going into April, things picked up. Then we went into May, things picked up even more. The market hit a peak in May. And then come June, the Bank of Canada takes out their wet blanket and stuns everybody with another interest rate hike. And that kind of just, took all the air out of the market. They did it again in July, and that put us into, a very slow time for the second half of the year. Basically, the market was dead in August. Ticked up a little bit around September, but then it died again around November, etc. And it hasn't recovered since then, right? It's been a slow winter. In a month over month, there's been some changes, but it's been a slow winter. Traditionally speaking, compared to other times, even with the pandemic aside, because people were going crazy during the pandemic. I don't count those years. I'm looking at the years prior to that. We were expecting things to pick up in March. They picked up slightly over February, but still not there, man. It's like, as I said off the top, it's the third lowest sales volume for the month of March in this whole century, in the whole 21st century. Okay, so let's keep that in as our context here as where we're going, and where it goes from here, who knows? If you listen to TRREB, everything's going to pick up again and be crazy. So let's continue reading here. As I said, there was enough competition between buyers to see a moderate increase in the average March home price compared to last year's level. Okay, so yeah, that's true. Prices did go up. What they call moderate, I call slight. Because prices went up from last year about 3% in Toronto, about 2% in Mississauga, pretty much flat in Brampton, no change at all there, and down about 5% in Oakville. And Oakville is a very small market area, so so take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But regardless, prices went down in Oakville. So not all areas saw a moderate increase in the average March home price, right? And I wouldn't even call it moderate. I'd call it very slight, right? Negligible is another word that comes to mind. Greater Toronto Area Realtors reported 6,560 sales throughout TRREB's MLS system in March, which is down on average about 4.5% compared to March 2023. New listings were up 15% over the same period. New listings were down by 3% compared to February. And the first quarter ended with sales up by 11.2% year over year. That's for the whole quarter, okay? Which, again, everything was so slow at the beginning of January and February last year. So you got to look at what you're comparing to. Keep going here. New listings were up by a greater annual rate of 18.3%. We have seen a gradual improvement in market conditions over the past quarter. Okay, as I mentioned, but last year's quarter was very slow to start until things started picking up in March. More buyers have adjusted to the higher interest rate environment, which might be true. At the same time, homeowners may be anticipating an improvement in market conditions in the spring, which helps explain the market increase in new listings so far this year. Let me read that again. This is a statement from the TRREB president. She says that homeowners may be anticipating an improvement in market conditions in the spring, which helps explain the marked increase in new listings so far this year. That's a crock of shit. Because if someone's expecting something to get better, they wouldn't have already put their house on the market. They're going to wait till it actually gets better. Okay, so I can see buyers jumping in saying, okay, rates are going to come down. I expect rates to come down. So I'm going to jump in and buy something. So you would expect sales to go up. But for listings to go up because people are expecting things to get better, well, why would you sell if you expect them to get better? You would wait, right? Am I wrong? Love to hear your comments, questions on that. If you think I'm right, give me a like. And as well, as always, if you do have questions as I'm going along here, by all means, post your questions in the comment section, and I'm happy to answer them while I'm still on the air. If you're watching this on the replay, no problem, no problemo. I can still answer your questions as soon as I can. I'd love for this to be an interactive show. So if you have questions, don't be shy. Go ahead and ask them. So this boggles my mind. You know, if you're expecting the market to get better, you wouldn't sell now. You would wait, right, until the market does get better, right? So for her to say that is a little bit far-fetched here. And she continues on, assuming we benefit from lower borrowing costs in the near future, sales will increase further, new listings will be absorbed, maybe. Still, we're still in a very unaffordable time. And tighter market conditions will push selling prices higher. Okay, so that's the narrative that's coming out of TRREB. And it seems to be a consensus out there that market prices will increase. I'm not denying that they will, but we can't predict that. We don't know what's going to happen. Okay, so it reminds me of a joke I saw the other day. What do you call a realtor who can predict the market? Wrong. Okay, so it's very tough to predict which way it's going to go. Yeah, home prices might go up, you know, and a broken clock is correct, you know, at least twice a day. So you might get lucky and they might go up, but they might come down as well. You know, unaffordability is still high. We're not completely sure when the Bank of Canada is going to start reducing the rates, and if they do, it's only going to be by a small percentage, maybe a quarter point in June, maybe another quarter point later in the year, etc. So, you know, if you're holding your breath and waiting for, you know, interest rates to come down and home prices to go up and all this, you know, I wouldn't advise holding your breath on that one. You know, having said that, it's still a good time to get in the market because we know that interest rates will come down. It's just a matter of time. And more people will get in, but how much they'll get in, we don't know. And I always see real estate as a long-term investment. Okay, so if your plan is to flip it in a couple of years, then I would advise against it. But if your plan is to keep it as a family home, you know, as somewhere to live and raise your family and grow, at least, you know, for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, then it's a great investment. By all means, get in there and get in there now because there's hardly any competition. With few sales means there's less competition. So you don't want to wait till more buyers get into the market. No, buy now while you still have some leverage as a buyer. You know, why would you want to get in when everyone else is jumping in the market, right? Is it Warren Buffett? I think he said, be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. Right now, people are fearful of getting in the market. So it's a time to be greedy. It's a time to get in there. You know, early 2022 and most of 2021 was a time to be fearful because everybody was greedy. Everybody was buying everything in sight, you know, sometimes sight unseen. You know, the market was going nuts. FOMO was in full effect, you know, fear of missing out. So people were feeling that way. So that was a time to be fearful. Right now, it's a time to be greedy. You know, so yeah, that's the way I see it. And we continue on here. This is from the TRREB's chief market analyst. He says the average selling price was up 1.3% to 1.12. Again, this is average across all areas. The average selling price edged up in comparison to last year as we moved through the first quarter of 2024. Price growth is expected to accelerate during the spring and even more so in the second half of the year. So he's towing the TRREB line here. As sales growth catches up with listings growth and sellers' market conditions. So he's kind of putting a warning out there that it's going to become a seller's market again. But we don't know that. We don't know that for a fact, right? Will things get more competitive? Probably, you know, but to throw words out there like seller's market condition and make people think, oh my God, it's going to be, you know, 2021 all over again. You can rest easy. It's not going to be 2021 all over again. Competition may increase slightly, but it's not going to be the crazy seller's market that we saw before. And he continues on, lower borrowing costs in the months ahead will help fuel increased demand for home ownership or ownership housing. Okay. Yes, so lower borrowing costs may help fuel increased demand. However, prices still remain high and if they continue high, then demand is not going to increase that much because people still can't afford to buy anything. And so unless interest rates come down significantly or home prices come down significantly, we still have an unaffordability problem. And then we hear from the TRREB CEO, as demand for ownership and rental housing increases, supply will continue to be top of mind. I agree with that. Governments at all levels must maintain their focus on pursuing innovative solutions to increase the amount and mix of housing supply to improve affordability. He says this every month, and it's true. I don't know if the governments are listening, probably not. This includes removing roadblocks to non-traditional arrangements, such as co-ownership models to benefit home buyers, including first-time buyers and seniors. Okay, last week, I believe I talked about different methods to get into the market, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. Talked about co-ownership, talked about some government plans and systems that are in place to help you get into the market. So, I mean, if you want to go back to last week's show and take a listen to that, I do mention co-ownership as well. Encouraging gentle density, including multiplexes, is critical to helping high demand areas such as the Greater Golden Horseshoe to meet housing supply targets. Yeah. Okay, so that's all great. So despite the sunny outlook that TRREB has out there, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. As I mentioned off the top, new listings are up significantly. Even active listings are up significantly year over year. And it's not because sellers are anticipating a better market. It may be because the people are having trouble keeping up with their mortgage payments. We've been talking about this for months now since the interest rates started. So maybe it's all catching up for people. Maybe they're looking at their renewals and thinking, maybe they're in a 1 or 2% interest rate right now, and they're facing a 5 or 6% renewal, and they know they can't afford it, so they're looking to sell right now. So yes, there may be increased competition and increased demand going forward, but we also may see increased supply if this continues. So I think we've got about maybe 15% of mortgages coming due this year, right? So it'll be interesting to see how these homeowners adjust and if they're able to renew or not, or they might be forced to sell. All right. So continuing on, month over month, there's been some slight changes month over month, not so much in terms of price. Prices are up about 1% in Toronto, about 6% in Mississauga, down 0.5% in Brampton, and similar down about 0.5% in Oakville. However, listings are up about 11% in Toronto, 10% in Mississauga, 21% in Brampton, and 7% in Oakville. And sales are up 17% in Toronto, 22% in Mississauga, 15% in Brampton, and 24% in Oakville. So month over month, we are seeing a bit of a tightening of the market. Not as much as we were anticipating. So when you look at the big picture, it's still a very slow spring market, but it is a little bit better than it was in February. And as I mentioned, prices are pretty flat month over month and year over year, so not much change there. Sellers are pretty stubborn. They don't want to reduce their price, and buyers either simply can't afford to purchase anything, or they're waiting for prices to come down. So they're pretty stubborn as well. There's a lot of tire kickers out there, people putting in offers, expecting to get a deal, and it's not happening. And the result is fewer and fewer sales. As I mentioned off the top, we have the third lowest sales this century for the month of March. And the biggest difference year over year is the huge spike in supply, from what I can see here. And again, I can't attribute that to people thinking that prices will improve. It just doesn't make sense. So it could be that the renewal, people are facing those renewal rates, higher renewal rates. So that's that. Unless there are any questions, I'm happy to take them right now. I will leave you with this. Okay. Um, don't try and time the market. Okay. Time in the market always is better than timing the market. Okay. I get this question all the time. When's the best time to sell? When's the best time to buy? The best time to sell and the best time to buy is what works for you as a home buyer and as a home seller. You know, sorry about that. I hope I'm still alive. Are you standing to benefit by selling your house now? You know, or maybe you have to sell now, so you have no choice, and that's fine. I'm talking about people who are looking at their options and trying to time the market. There's no such thing as timing the market. Okay, does it benefit you to sell now? If you're buying and selling in the same market, then it really doesn't matter, right? Especially if you're in similar neighborhoods. If you're moving out of province or out of country, that's a different story. But if you're buying and selling the same market, then it really doesn't matter when you do it. But the best time to buy is what works for you. Are you qualified to buy? You have all your ducks in a row. You got to make sure that you will be able to qualify. And that's the best time to buy. Best time to sell is when you're ready to sell. Is it a good time for you to sell? So don't try and time the market. Don't look at the market. Don't look at what's happening out there. Look internally and look and seeing what's happening in your situation. So the best thing you can do is hire a realtor who's going to understand your situation and truly care about your situation and not just be looking for another commission check, right? Because if they're always trying to sell something, they're always going to push you. Yeah, sell now. You don't know what's going to happen. The market's going to tank, et cetera, et cetera. Buy now, because the prices are going to go up, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to hire somebody who's going to look out for you as a home seller and as a home buyer and make sure they are working in your best interests and no one else's best interests, and certainly not their best interests. All right. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you next week.